Hey everybody, welcome back to another Rodenberg Rocks video. I am in a nice abode of my home. We're going to do a video with my rock tumbler because I just got a nice fresh shipment of 5-pound silicone carbide 6090 grit. So I haven't been tumbling for the last few months, one, because I haven't had enough rocks to do so, and then two, because I was out of this grit. This is the first stage grit that I use in my rock tumbling process. So we can start the tumble process again because now we got a lot of rocks. So I got this bag mixture from one of our subscribers, Maple. She came up to northern Minnesota. I was unfortunately in Florida, but she left me this little stash. So I'm going to tumble some of these rocks, as well as Rob over at Michigan Rocks when we went on a rock hunt earlier this year. He left me a lot of Petoskey stones, a few Charlevoix stones, I believe some epidote, and some unikite in there. Oh, and some pudding stone. So I'm gonna be tumbling that for the first time ever, which is gonna be super cool, super fun learning process, as well as agates, my so-called bread and butter. I'm no pro at tumbling, I'm still learning, but super excited to do this. So I'll show you a little bit of my setup and what I'm gonna do. So here's my little setup for the time being. It's just a desk right now, but basically I got two 3-pound barrel drums. I just got these from Harbor Freight with my rock tumbler setup that I showed in a previous video. Got my different larger rock mixes. Honestly, I haven't done a lot of tumbling with any larger rocks, so that's going to be a little bit different for me. As you can see, I have a bunch of agates that I have found over our hunts, and maybe a couple other miscellaneous rocks just dumped out here. The reasons it's dumped out is because I already had one barrel filled up with that, so that kind of just shows you a bigger idea of how much rocks that I fit in there. So here's my little containers that I put in the grit with, and then I have the little markings from where I bought it at Rock Shed. I'll link where I buy them in the description. And then I have these little scoops. So I 3D printed these scoops. It says 2 scoops. I think it's typically 2 tablespoons. But as you see, I have a 3D printer here, and I 3D printed all these. So perfectly, I will put in 1 or 2 scoops each into these 3-pound barrels. I used to have a 1-pound barrel, so I'd put in 1 of these scoops, but now I'm starting to put in 2 of these scoops. So hence why I bought 5-pound bag of the grit, and I probably should be buying in bigger bulk than that. So let's fill them up and see how they look. So a lot of those small agates that I use, I typically pick a lot of them up because I do a lot of craft projects with them. More specifically right now, I make a lot of magnets of the shapes of the states. So I have a Minnesota mold, I have a Michigan mold, I have a Wisconsin mold, and then I have a Washington mold. And the reason I have a Washington mold is just funny. I was rock hunting one day, and I shared with people that I was just talking to. They were dumping out rocks that they had from their grandma. They didn't have anything to do with it, so I picked through some and let them toss them back. But told them what I do. And they're like, "Oh, you should make a Washington magnet. We'd love to buy one." So I made a Washington magnet. Not sure how they'll ever get a hold of me, but I just think it's a funny story why I got the Washington one. So that's what I use with the little polished agates for. I sell them on Etsy. I just put them on there, but I just like making them, and I think they look cool. So I can post a link down below if people are interested in seeing pictures of what they look like. But yeah, that's what I do when I tumble these. So here are all the rocks that Maple left me. Forgive me, Maple, I don't remember all the different stones you left me. I know some of them, I believe, are cold water agates. As you can see, there's some banding on these. They're not our typical bright red color like in northern Minnesota. But yeah, she delivered these and just gave them to me, so I really appreciate that, and I'm just really excited to tumble them and see how some of them turn out. Very cool. These come from Michigan, by the way. Then I have some of the rocks that Rob at Michigan Rocks left me. So I know a little bit more of these. This is a pudding stone, super cool rock. I'm probably gonna throw this one in the tumbler. And then we got a good chunk of Petoskey stones, which, wow, that one is gorgeous, which is the state stone of Michigan. I know Rob knew how much I enjoyed those. So I'm excited to tumble those. I'm going to save a lot of them because I'm going to try and use a flat lap, or kind of just a better way to polish it without damaging them. Rob left me some in the bag. As you can see, that are a few steps in for me to practice on. But I'll throw a couple in the tumbler. Also, I believe this is a Charlevoix stone. It might be something different. This is what I remember them looking like. It's just another, I believe, fossilized coral. So we're gonna throw some of these pieces in there, and I'll show you what they both look like filled up. So this is what the two different barrels look like filled up. This one does not have as many gaps compared obviously to this one. So I always worry about these getting a good tumble or a shine. I've tumbled probably 6 or 7 batches filled up to brim like this with not much space. And honestly, they do pretty well. The part that I've lacked in, and what I see a lot of tumblers and like more like professional people with rock tumbling, is there's a lot of gaps and spaces that they leave so that the rocks have room to bump against each other and bump against the grit. So I'm curious to see the difference between the two from the strategy that I've done. So yeah, but yeah, I fill them up about 3/4 of the way. That's how I've learned it. Now I'll top them off with about 2 scoops each of this 60/90 silicone carbide grit to start. They always say the first stage you want to do until you can do it as many times or repeat it as many times until you are satisfied with the shapes of the rocks, if all the rough edges have been smoothed, because once you get to the polished grit, it does not do that as much, obviously, because the higher the grit, the more shiny that it's preparing to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this up with water. I typically will go a little bit underneath the high rock mark, just because I do want them, again, to have that room to bump into each other, and I don't want it to just be a water slurry bumping up against each other. So I'll go fill them up and show you what that looks like. So what I've learned with the first few stages, especially with those barrels that have some gaps in it, I think it's a lot more fine having that space again to bump around it. But once I get to the more final stages, when I start using aluminum oxide polish, as well as the 500 aluminum oxide prior to that, I get these ceramic pellets that I will throw in there, so that way when these rocks are bumping up against each other, they won't do as much scratches or damage to each other. It's more to take away some of those potential things to happen. I've utilized that in the barrels before that are already pretty full, but again, it kind of just takes up a lot of room, and I don't think the rocks have enough space at that point to rub up against each other. So I don't think I'm going to put it in that more full barrel. So thought I would just kind of emphasize why I would do that. So this is them filled up with water. Again, a little bit lower than the top rock, as well as here. You can see a little bit of the water down below. So we're gonna seal these off, throw them on the tumbler. I will typically leave them on there for about 6 to 8 days. I know a lot of people have experience with the grit kind of being completely done in 4 days even. My tumbler is a little bit slower than my previous one, so I'm gonna give it that extra time to make sure all the grit's used. So we got our barrels sealed and ready to go. Here's comparison. This is my 1 pound barrel from my original tumbler. This is the 3 pound one. So obviously a lot bigger. This one's a lot more heavy duty compared to this one's more rubber. This one's got a more solid rubber, as well as more of a foundation on the inside, which is a lot more long lasting. So it's nice because I can fit both these on here at the same time, and I can just fire it up, and we'll let that go for about 6 to 8 days, and then we'll come check it out. And that's about how I set up my tumbler each week. Every time I switch out to either the same grit to kind of polish the pieces that I want, or if I move them on to the next stage. And that's typically a weekly, like you said, 6 to 8. Higher grits I'll do 7 to 10. But it can take a while. So yeah, it is what it is, but the end product's always worth it, which is fun. So, and also with recording these videos, I need to do this a little bit more, because this is a big side of what I do when I find those rocks. As much as I love recording the rock hunting, and where I go and the finds I make, I need to enjoy this side of it as well, because this is half the battle, and I want to make sure I can get better at recording it, showing you what I do, how my rocks turn out, and kind of take you along on that different side of the journey. So appreciate you guys learning alongside me. We'll see you in 6 to 8 days with the next stage, or if we keep them in the next. But yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate all you guys. We'll see you next video. Thanks.